The former strategist to President Trump and an influential MAGA personality, Steve Bannon, says Republicans are failing to sell the one big beautiful bill of tax and spending cuts. He says a lack of town hall meetings being held by members of Congress during the August recess is missing an opportunity to speak directly to voters about what he says are the benefits of the bill. Joining me to discuss, Julia Manchester, national political reporter here at The Hill. Hey, Julia. You know, it's kind of a catch-22 when it comes to Republicans considering town halls right now. If you don't, you miss an opportunity to convey your message. But if you do, you're probably going to get yelled at by angry constituents.
Yeah, exactly. And House Republicans are very aware of that. In fact, earlier this year, before that so-called big beautiful bill passed through Congress, we heard about the House Republican campaign chair, Richard Hudson, advising his members, maybe stay away from doing town halls. Now, this was earlier in the year. A lot has changed between earlier in the year and now. But, right now, I think Republicans are struggling with how to best sell this legislation. You have J.D. Vance, for example, the vice president, going around the country to sell the legislation. He did in Ohio, for example, earlier this month. Today, he is in Georgia, a major battleground state, selling that legislation. So they're doing it. But the question is, how does this impact House Republicans? I mean, J.D. Vance isn't facing re-election next year. A number of House Republicans are facing some pretty tough re-election races across the country. So they have to figure out how they can best sell this bill, which, according to polls, isn't exactly popular in a widespread way with Americans.
How central do you think the one big beautiful bill will be to next year's midterms? And do you think Republicans might try to shift to different turf where they think their advantage might be greater?
So right now, in this moment, I would say it's going to be pretty central. But like I said, a lot could change between now and the midterms. I remember covering the 2022 midterms, for example, in June. Before that midterm year, we saw the overturning of Roe versus Wade, which ended up defining that midterm election cycle. So a lot can happen, but you're seeing Democrats very much try to put Republicans on the defense when it comes to this issue, particularly to the Medicaid cuts and the cuts to government programs like SNAP that we could see in the coming years as a result of this legislation. But it's all about how they sell this legislation. Talking to Republicans, they say, look, we have to sell this as a tax cut, a tax cut across the board for Americans in an effort to combat that messaging over government programs and Medicaid. So right now you have Democrats trying to make it an issue, but we'll see what happens and maybe if the American people's perception of the legislation changes in the next year or so.
Yeah, it strikes me that that could be a difficult sell on the tax front part because you're essentially extending tax cuts that were already in place. So the sell is that we prevented something bad from happening, but it's not changing the reality for a lot of people because they already enjoy those tax cuts. And then you have this Medicaid issue where Democrats are going to be going around hammering Republicans for cuts to the program.
That's right. And they're talking about the extension of the 2017 Trump tax cuts, which passed during his first administration. They say that kickstarted the economy, that it led to, widespread prosperity, very much citing what many people would call trickle-down economics. But Democrats pushing back on that, saying that this only benefits the top income brackets in the U.S. It won't be a win for the middle class. Expect to hear a lot of messaging on both sides of the aisle on the middle class. I think you're going to hear Democrats and Republicans trying to spin and message on how this legislation is ultimately good for the middle class. But, ultimately, Drew, it really depends on how voters are feeling in the next year's midterms in October and November of that year. If the economy is going well, I would say that is a plus for Republicans. But if we're continuing to see inflation continue to rise, prices, rising as a result, maybe of President Trump's tariffs, then you could see Democrats getting the advantage there.
It's the economy stupid, as the Ragin' Cajun always says. Julia Manchester, thanks so much for your insight. Always appreciate it.
Thanks, Drew.